On This Week in Enterprise Tech, Cheever takes us back to Wispapalooza with some groundbreaking Wi-Fi tech. Plus, Curtis is going to take us through gamifying security training. That sounds cool. Plus, we have a great guest, Jessica Burton from Seagate, to talk about bleeding-edge technology and how storage is going to bring it all back together. It's Wyatt on the set.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twyat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 370, recorded December 6th, 2019. Gaming the Work. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology's advanced technology center is like no other testing and research lab with more than $500 million of equipment, including OEMs like NetApp. And it's virtual, so you can access it 24/7. To learn more and get insights into all that has to offer, go to wet.com/twit. And by Thanks Canary. Detect attackers on your network with honeypots that can be deployed in minutes. For 10% off and a 60-day money-back guarantee, go to canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How to Hear About Us box. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Thinking about moving your data storage to the cloud? Wasabi is enterprise-class cloud storage at 1/5 the price of Amazon S3 and up to 6 times faster with no hidden fees for egress or API requests. Calculate your savings and try Wasabi with free unlimited storage for a month at wasabi.com, code ENTERPRISE. Welcome to Twyat, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big, giant world of the enterprise, but I definitely can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts in their field, starting with our very own geek in paradise, Mr. Brian Chee, Director of Advanced Network Computer Laboratory in Honolulu. Cheebert, are you gearing up for the holidays?
Yes, I definitely am. I'm actually going crazy, going through a lot of video, coming up to the holidays. So that means the best of X is going to be on. So best of Twyat, we're going through our video archives and trying to choose some real nice tidbits to entertain you during this holiday season.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, talk about tidbits. We have some pretty great ones coming from our next co-host, Senior Editor of Dark Reading, our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, how about you? Are you gearing up for the holidays as well?
Oh, we are. We were traveling earlier this week. We did our big holiday travel around the Thanksgiving vacation and learned a lesson about climate because we got whacked by the great northeastern snowstorm, but we're happy to be back in the warm, friendly confines of the swamp. Looking forward to stay here until the new year.
Well, the holidays, they always give us time to reflect on an amazing year behind us. Like Cheever said, look out for the Twyat's Best of show coming to a subscription near you in the coming weeks. But before we do that, today we have a pretty amazing show. Not only is Cheever going to take us through some groundbreaking Wi-Fi tech, Chris is actually going to take us through gamifying security training. That sounds interesting. Plus, we have a great guest, Jessica Burton from Seagate, to talk about bleeding edge technology and how storage is going to bring it all back together. But before we all get into all that goodness, let's go ahead and jump into this week's blips. Now, it wouldn't be an enterprise week without a leak. Now, this week we have another case of ransomware, but this time it's targeting Grandma and Grandpa. That's right. A company that provides technology services to more than 100 nursing homes across the U.S. is now victim to a ransomware attack. Now, what are the hackers demanding? Well, how about a small sum of measly $14 million before hackers will unlock the files? Now, what do you think? Does that sound like a lot of money for ransomware, especially to a nursing home? Well, because the Milwaukee-based company has been unable to pay the ransom, nursing home services can't access patient records, use the internet, pay employees, or order medication for their people. That sounds really bad. Now, they're pretty much stopped dead in their tracks. It's not clear whether the company has disaster recovery in place, but what they do have and what they've noted was they're working hard to get electronic medical records back up for especially the life-threatening situations handled first. Now, how did hackers get in and infect the systems? Well, a Milwaukee security firm called Hold Security found that Russian hackers had infected virtual care's computers over 14 months using malicious email attachments. Now, there's essentially sleepers until they pulled the trigger and unlocked all their data. Now, 20% of services were infected with viruses, affecting over 100 physical servers. Now, this whole ordeal brings up even more questions about the new year coming, whether we will see a rise in ransomware attacks and cyber insurance premiums.
Well, researchers are getting more info than ever on botnet operators. Researchers who discovered one of the largest Android banking botnets to date also found its attackers' chat log, which they've been watching for nearly a year to learn the inner workings of the cybercrime operation, how its illicit business is structured, and how its members interact. The botnet, dubbed Ghost, was first detected in 2018. Then a team of security researchers representing Czech Technical University in Prague, Unkuyo University, and Avast Software noticed one of Yoast botmasters logging into a command and control domain while using the insecure proxy network created by HTBot malware. What they found was a massive botnet targeting Russian citizens. Now, Yoast has nearly 1 million victims. It also has 15 C2 servers, thousands of domains, and thousands of malicious Android application packages, or APKs, which are used to distribute and install applications on Android. The discovery of Ghost was made possible in part due to several OPSEC failures by the attackers, the researchers say. One of their first mistakes was relying on proxies. Ghost operators also failed to use encryption, and all of their chat communication was in clear text and HTTP. Ghost operators also failed to use encryption, and all their chat communication was therefore visible to the researchers. That chat log gave researchers significant insight into how the Ghost business operation worked, the human relations between the criminals, their daily tasks, motivational issues, money laundering, decisions made, and challenges faced. Their criminal projects included pay-per-install, phishing website hosting, C2 development, malicious APKs, and fake game development. What stood out most to the researchers was how Ghost operators treated the botnet not as an attack, but as a business. Most people have the perception that adversaries are fighting us, say the researchers, but their mindset is completely different. They're not fighting, they explain. For them, it's just a job.
Wheel. Brand new Pokemon manhole covers coming to Japan's snowy Hokkaido prefecture. Pokefuta spread to the northernmost region of Japan with adorable appearances by Vulpix, Ninetales, and many more Pokemon. One of the secrets to the sustained popularity of the Pokemon franchise is how every couple of years the designers populate another region of the game's world with a slew of new pocket monsters to find. But that's not something that's happening just in the Pokemon games and anime, but in real-life Japan too. In recent years, fans in Japan have added another Poke vocabulary word to their personal lexicon, Pokefuta. Decorative manhole covers featuring adorable Pokemon species posing at local landmarks, futa being the Japanese word for cover or lid. So far, Pokefuta have appeared in Kanagawa, Kagoshima, Iwate, and Miyagi prefectures, plus, of course, Kagawa, since it's the prefecture that named a Pokemon as its governor. Now, though, Pokefuta are heading to Japan's northernmost prefecture of all, the island of Hokkaido. So, yeah, I know this is an enterprise, but it was just way too fun not to mention for you Pokemon fans like Padre.
Well, that was some cute and fuzzy things, but let's go ahead and talk about something evil. Now, have you heard about the Evil Corp? Well, for the last decade, the hackers behind Evil Corp had led a sustained assault on big accounts of thousands of victims across dozens of countries. By steadily evolving malware known as Bagat, or however you pronounce that thing, they indiscriminately siphoned tens of millions of dollars from unwitting victims. Well, this month, the FBI has indicted Evil Corp's alleged leader, known as Aqua. Now, the indictment goes into the playbook details about how Aqua and actually one of his other associates have rolled out countless attacks over the years. Now, they would actually convince victims to click on a malicious link in a phishing email to download Bagat. Now, once installed, the malware would actually use a variety of techniques to steal data, a keylogger to grab passwords, or creating fake bank accounts or bank pages to trick someone into voluntarily entering their credentials. Armed with that information, the hackers then would arrange for electronic fund transfers from the victim's bank account to the network of so-called money mules, who would then get the funds back to Evil Corp. Now, essentially, each and every one of these were basically a cyber bank robbery. Now, even though these Russian attackers have been indicted, they're still at large in Russia. Another interesting way that actually Evil Corp has scaled this out is apparently they also are basically in a franchise business as well. According to the court documents, they actually gave a UK resident access to their malware in exchange for $100,000 up front, plus 50% of all the revenues, with a minimum take of $50,000 a week. Like any good franchisor, Evil Corp offered technical support as needed. Now, since at least 2011, the FBI estimates that Bagad, also known as Drydex or Krydex, resulted in losses of $100 million or more across hundreds of banks. Now, Evil Corp has evolved over the years as well. In fact, Evil Corp has switched from a centralized command and control center to a peer-to-peer botnet to make their activities harder to trace, used even more sophisticated so-called web injects to trick users into entering sensitive information. They actually ditched international wire transfers to ensure that they can be more anonymous by using ransomware tied to cryptocurrency payments instead. But this is why it's been the most widespread and destructive malware and banking Trojan in the world over the last decade. Now, the FBI is hoping by publicizing the indictment, it will signal other associates to potentially turn on them for this fancy reward of being $5 million. If nothing else, the hacker known as Aqua won't be as fluid anymore.
Well, senators are actually agreeing on something, calling for an end to a controversial NSA program. Republicans and Democrats in Congress have come together to support ending one of the National Security Agency's more controversial surveillance programs. The Call Detail Records program, which collects metadata on every phone call to, from, or within the U.S., would end under a bill introduced by Senators Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, and Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, who are respectively the ranking members on the Senate Intelligence Committee. According to senators, the program, begun in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, no longer effectively serves its intended purpose. The program was significantly changed after its existence was disclosed by Edward Snowden in 2013. The NSA has struggled to satisfy the new requirements of the program, ultimately suspending it in 2018 and purging all records collected since 2015. Now, the Trump administration has defended the program and called for its continuation. Despite this support, senators on the Intelligence Committee say that its current effectiveness does not justify the public relations and operational liabilities the program poses. Now, Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, has announced that he will introduce a bill that would prohibit certain location tracking surveillance activities and require more transparency from intelligence agencies while allowing critical surveillance to continue.
Well, this article is interesting. It's written by a good friend of mine, and it's why you need to create or update your emergency communications plan. So I'll let you read the article by Wayne Rash on creating the emergency communications plan for your organization. But I wanted to point out that while satellite phone subscriptions are fairly expensive when compared to your current cellular plan, the lack of a way for your organization to call for help could cost you a lot more. This came up because of a large number of cell sites that went dark during the recent Northern California fires, and even landline systems were also going dark. The bottom line is that perhaps a subscription to something like the Garmin InReach satellite SMS system or an Iridium telephone might sound like a luxury item, but being trapped by wildfires and not being able to call for help is something that Californians recently faced. Just to put this in perspective, the Garmin InReach plan for emergencies only can be as low as $15 a month. That allows for 10 text messages, which could be to anyone, via the Bluetooth connected smartphone, and unlimited SOS messages, and should work just about anywhere that can see the sky. I happen to use mine to tweet my location in the middle of Denali National Park so that friends and family could know I'm safe, and also to encourage them to think about their next big adventure.
Enough that Amazon's AWS lost on the Jedi contract, which was actually worth billions for them, the FTC is now coming after them as well. Now, the FTC has said that they've been out talking to the software companies about Amazon's business practices. I would say, Amazon. The news comes after the agency began looking into whether Amazon had engaged in any anti-competitive business practices on its online marketplace back in September. Now, Amazon has a growing cloud business, which actually grew 35% year over year to $9 billion in the third quarter of 2019. Now, it is actually also on top of the largest cloud providers in the world. Now, as part of its inquiry into AWS, the FTC may examine whether Amazon is discriminating against companies that also work with the other cloud providers and prioritizing those who work with it exclusively. Now, the FTC is reportedly broadening its examination into Amazon's business as tech behemoths across the industry are coming under the increased scrutiny over whether their respective businesses are harming competition. Now, the Department of Defense announced in July that it was launching a broad probe into platforms for search, social media, and e-commerce to investigate how market-leading companies are impacting innovation. Executives from Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple were also grilled during a House committee hearing in July regarding the size and scope of their business. Now, many players in Washington are calling for Amazon to be regulated. Now, with companies like Disney gobbling up competition and mergers like T-Mobile and Sprint, the size discussion will continue to come into light around anti-competition discussion growth in the future. I have a feeling 2020 will be the year of regulation. Well, folks, next up, the bites. But before we get there, we have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Worldwide Technology. If you ever get a chance to visit the Worldwide Technology Advanced Technology Center, you should definitely go because it's really a really amazing site to see. They've actually been building it for over 10 years, and it's really grown exponentially. In fact, it's really like no other testing and research lab you've ever seen. Now listen to the lab and what it actually contains. More than $500 million in equipment from hundreds of OEMs and key partners ranging from heavyweights like NetApp, Cisco, and VMware to emerging disruptors like Tanium, Equinix, and Expanse. Now, when you're developing products, you want to work with an organization you can trust, right? Well, WWT is that trusted partner who will stay with you over the years. In fact, many of its customers have been with them for over a decade because they know WWT is where they can go to get the answers they need to make sure the business runs right. Now, with all that it has to offer, the ATC, it really is an incubator for IT innovation. Listen to what else it has to offer. It actually has on-demand, schedulable labs like NetApp Cloud Volumes on tap on Flash, NetApp Disaster Recovery as a Service, along with hundreds of other labs representing newest advances in flash storage, multi-cloud, hyper-converged infrastructure, cloud data management, and more. Now, you've worked on large projects and products before, right? Well, sometimes you want to actually know what the industry has to offer before you start to build them. Well, that's where ATC and WT's ATC actually jumps in. They have lab as a service, and it's a dedicated lab space within the ATC. Here, customers can perform programmatic testing using their vast technology ecosystem that WWT has already built. Now, it's virtual. You can actually take advantage of ATC's unique benefits anywhere in the world 24/7. Now, WWT's engineers work on these labs every day. They beta test new equipment. They build reference architectures and custom integrations to help their customers make decisions and see results faster and with much less investment. Now, if you've been eagerly awaiting a way to get to the market faster, the time is finally here. WWT has launched their new digital ecosystem encompassing the ATC. Now, this ecosystem creates a multiplier effect of knowledge, speed, and agility anytime, anywhere around the world for their customers. Get access to articles, case studies, hands-on labs, and any other tools that make the difference in today's fast-paced world. To learn more about WWT, the ATC, and sign up for access to the new on-demand lab platform, go to wwt.com/twit. WWT simplifies the complex. That's wwt.com/twit. WWT, delivering business and technology outcomes around the world. And we thank Worldwide Technologies for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. And this time, we actually want to bring some more insights from Wispapalooza. And this time, Gerbert's going to bring in John Mead, Senior Director of Engineering from Cambium Networks, to talk about Cambium Matrix switches. Take it away, Gerbert.
I'm at Wispapalooza 2019 at the Rio Convention Center. I'm standing here with John Mead of Cambium Networks, and we're going to start talking about the cnMatrix product series. So, John, tell me a little bit about this.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wispapalooza. My name is John Mead, and I'm a responsible for these Ethernet switches here at Cambium Networks. What we have here today is cnMatrix, our enterprise portfolio of Ethernet switches. These top 4 switches, they're available today, they're shipping today, they've been shipping since last December. These bottom 3 switches are new for us. They will start shipping in January, and we're very excited about them. The bottom 2 switches are our 48-port PoE switches. We have 2 options, one with an internal fixed power supply, one with a removable power supply. We are very excited about this option. The removable power supply comes in both AC and DC supplies with different size of wattage outputs for PoE, anywhere from 500 watts up to 1,000 watts of PoE output, depending on the removable power supply that you purchase. This third switch we're very, very excited about. This switch is capable of 802.3BZ, giving you up to 2.5 gig on your ports. This supports the new next generation wave of Wi-Fi access points that truly do need more than 1 gig of throughput. This is a hybrid switch, so it's not all 2.5 gig, keeps the cost down. We have 8 of your standard 1 gig PoE capable ports, and we have 6 of the 2.5 gig capable ports with 4 pair power PoE, which gives you up to 60 watts per port. Also, of course, we have the 2 10 gig fiber uplinks as well. Very complete, very exciting portfolio of Ethernet switches. Again, these switches are enterprise grade, cloud managed, L2 and L3 capable.
So, John, these are great, but it's a pretty crowded market.
Yes.
What makes the Matrix series so special?
Let me touch on that right now. So there are 3 themes that we really focused on when creating these switches. One was quality. We wanted to make sure these switches were reliable, dependent, and robust. And we're backing that up with a 5-year warranty, not your typical 1-year warranty. Our second theme was ease of use. We want to make it very easy to deploy these switches, maintain these switches, manage these switches, troubleshoot the switches. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Our third theme is we want to be feature rich. We want to have the features that any customer will need. So we do have a full suite of L2 features. We have a full suite of L3 features, full suite of security features. These switches are fully managed, supporting CLI, Web GUI, SNMP applications, as well as a network management solution so you can manage multiple switches at the same time. We use cnMatrix for that can run either on-premise or in the cloud. Now, about ease of use, we have a feature that we're very, very proud of, very excited about. It's called policy-based automation, or PBA for short. Policy-based automation allows you to write a policy for a certain class of device. For example, video surveillance cameras. You write a policy for video surveillance cameras, 2 components in these policies: how to detect the device and what actions or what configuration do you want to take place when the device is connected to the switch. So if I write one policy for video surveillance cameras, I can now plug my video surveillance policy into any port of any switch in my network, and that switch will be automatically configured. It removes the error-prone and time-consuming manual configuration that is otherwise needed. They say that 80% of network outages is due to misconfiguration of the network. So imagine wanting to deploy a network at a stadium. You're going to have 30 Ethernet, and you're going to have 200 video surveillance cameras, and you're going to have 200 access points. What you do is you deploy these switches, you push 2 policies down to these switches, one for the video surveillance cameras, one for the Wi-Fi access points. And then with the policies installed, now you can just plug and play. You plug your video surveillance cameras, all 200 of them, into any port of any switch. You plug in all 200 of your wireless access points into any port of any switch. No manual configuration required at all. Very easy to deploy and error-free. So it's a very, very exciting feature for us. We believe that we are providing a true zero-touch experience for our customers.
Super cool. The other night we were talking at over a little mini trade show, shall we say? And one of the things I asked you is, some of the other brand X switches, they say they provide SNMP, but it's this real abbreviated MIB that barely tells me anything about the switch.
Sure.
You guys have a much richer database, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, every single feature on our box, every sub-feature on our box is instrumented with an SNMP MIB. Not everyone uses SNMP to manage their box, but for those people that do, they can use their favorite SNMP application, and we will, of course, support it.
Fabulous. John, you've been terrific. Thank you so much. I loved learning about the cnMatrix series of switches.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, that was a great bite. Thanks for taping that for us, Brian, and bringing us more information from Wispapalooza. And now I want to talk a little bit about gamification, because more and more companies are using games to add a spoonful of sugar to security training. You know, back in 1964, I, along with the rest of the world, learned that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's not the first time a key principle of gamification was said out loud, but it was probably the catchiest and sung in the best voice. Now, in 2019, tidying up changed hands from Mary Poppins to Marie Kondo, but the idea that making a task enjoyable makes it more likely to be done has been embraced by the business world and cybersecurity training. Now, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines gamification as the process of adding games or game-like elements to something such as a task so as to encourage participation. For many responsible for turning new hires from security vulnerabilities into security assets, it's a key strategy in keeping them focused on their training. There are numerous studies that show that gamification not only increases engagement, but increases learning retention, according to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise's cybersecurity awareness manager, Laurel Chesky. She says HPE has increased the degree to which it uses gamification in cybersecurity training because it has seen positive results with the technique. Now, she says that HPE has mandatory basic cybersecurity training, but much more training that is optional. And where they truly use the gamification is getting employees to come back and engage in the optional common sense information of the additional training. She says that if they aren't doing that in a fun, engaging way, they simply won't come back. So they have to do it through gamification. Now, the important thing, she and other experts say, is not just to do gamification, but to do it right. According to Colin Bastable, who's CEO of Lucy Security, gamification is great, but you need variety. He sees gamification as critical as part of a broader strategy. Now, the HPE director says that what they have as metrics reflect that variety. She says, we started off with a very grassroots DIY type of gaming with a web-based trivia game they created, but they have moved on from the in-house created application that was very simple and web-based to something far more sophisticated. The HPE cybersecurity training manager, Joanne O'Connor, says that they created a different game called Fish or No Fish that uses Yammer as a platform. They'll post an image on one of the Yammer channels and ask participants whether it's a form of a phishing email that they've intercepted or not. Employees who provide the correct answer win recognition points that are exchangeable for various prizes. Now, there's a lot of academic research talking about how gamification works and why. But the basic thing is that it is becoming more and more used because companies see it as more and more effective. Now, some people say that this is just a generational tool, that in fact, millennials, Gen Xers, and other younger employees want or need or respond to gamification to a much greater extent than do, well, let's say, baby boomers. But the experts we talked to said that the gamification works all across the age groups, although they do admit that there are differences in the precise types of games that can be more or less effective for different age groups. One way or another, it's highly likely that the next time you change jobs, when you go for training, you're going to find an element of a game in there, because the research has shown that you will learn more and retain more when you do. So I'm going to turn to my co-host, Brian, I'm going to turn to you. Now, I know that you work at a university, but have you seen or taken part in any training that involved games as a platform?
Why, yes, I have. I've actually, in both my lives, I actually had a Jeopardy-like training on federal law enforcement laws, different laws, when I was at the Law Enforcement Education Center in the East Coast someplace. Anyway, that was actually Jeopardy. That was kind of cool. We've also had it in the academic environment when we start dealing with a lot of different things, very complex topics. So when we started doing a lot of things with, say, oceanographic principles and things like that, some of the faculty have actually done it in a game format. I would absolutely love to see cybersecurity training come to the university. I cannot tell you how many times we have people clicking on phishing emails and we're dealing with having to do the cleanup. I'm kind of hoping someone decides to go and package this thing up and make it available to all kinds of organizations instead of just keeping it internal.
Well, I have seen a number of different platforms that are available, both commercial and open source. So it is, in fact, something that a lot of companies can use if they decide they need to. Now, Lou, I want to turn to you. Is this something that you see as a tool that's effective with all different age groups, or is this just something those wild and crazy kids are into when they come into the workforce?
It's definitely effective of all ages as well as all technical experience backgrounds. I think one thing I noticed is I was visiting a company, and one of the people that I was actually shadowing for the day, they got an email that was essentially a phishing attempt. And they, obviously they detected it by just reading through it. They looked at all the cues and they actually detected that it was a phishing attempt. And so they reported it to their IT department. And what found out is they actually ended up getting a gift card because of it. So what they're doing here is they're training their employees, their users, by gamifying the practice of not only training. So they send them through this training to say, hey, we want you to do this and learn these kind of cues that you can look for. But also, when you do actually perform the operation, you're successful, we'll actually give you a reward for that. And I think that really is helpful because it does gamify it. Everyone's like, oh man, I got it. I got only 2 of those this week. I can only get 1 more gift card, that kind of thing. And so I think it's definitely effective. It didn't really matter who the user was or how junior they were in the organization. They were just loving it. And it was actually really training them because they looked for the cues that they needed to look for to be able to detect such things. And so I really think that this can scale really well across the industry and across different disciplines for sure.
Well, Brian, we've heard that you've used it. Lou's talked about his experience. So I guess my question to you is, do you see any real hard limits to gamification? Are there topics or levels of training that you think really should be left to the traditional training methods?
I'm not so sure. Can't think of anything off the top of my head, but realistically, one thing I do want to caution is there can be too much. If we start getting to the point where employees or organizational members expect rewards for correct activity, are we sending the right message? So I love that, the gift card works and things like that, but we need to try and get to the point where people do the correct thing without always expecting a reward, lest we start getting into, well, I didn't get that, so phooey on you, and I'm going to do the exact opposite. I've seen that many times with school children where they got way too involved with just the reward and not learning the actual lesson.
Well, getting people to do the right thing for the right reason may well be beyond the scope of any particular game. Well, this is something that we'll be seeing in the future a lot more of. And as we see more of it in enterprise IT, we'll be talking about it here on Twiat. Now, though, it's time to go back to Lou to take us to the next sponsor and the rest of This Week in Enterprise Tech.
Thanks, Curt. That's right. I don't want to get my favorite part of the show, which is to bring the guest in to drop some knowledge on the Twilight. Right before we do, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Thanks Canary. Now, we all know that hackers take the path of least resistance, right? Now, I always say your organization is only as secure as your weakest link. And what is your weakest link? Well, your users, of course. And to get this, on average, it takes 191 days for a company to actually realize there actually has been a data breach. Now, you and I hear about new data breaches every day, and they're on the trend. Now, companies spend millions of dollars on IT security, but still don't know why or when they are compromised. Now, take Marriott Hotels. 500 million guests were affected by the breach over a 4-year period. Yikes. Now, that's where Thanks Canary steps in. These honeypot appliances are awesome. They sprinkle a couple of those devices on your network, and when there's a breach, you will be alerted immediately. Now, back in 2000s, people talked about using honeypots, but they weren't easily deployed and used. Now, Canary has made this simple with zero administration and managing overhead. Now, Canaries can be set up in under 4 minutes and within minutes configured. Now, your Canary will look identical to a router, a switch, a NAS server, a Linux box, or a Windows server. Attackers can't tell the difference. Now, Thanks is the company behind Canaries and has been fighting back in the security game for over 2 decades, training companies, militaries, and governments on how to break into networks, and they've used that experience to build Canary. Now, you might think, well, hackers are gonna detect these things. Not at all. Now, Thanks Canary, they actually look vulnerable on your network. They look like the real thing. They look valuable. You can even put fake files on them or even enroll them in Active Directory. Now, these devices add extreme value to your fight against security breaches. Not only are they great value, but they're actually licensed annually. And if they break down during that year, Thanks will actually just replace them. Now, since the price is right, you can start with a few and scale up over time. Some of the largest organizations in the world use Canaries on their networks. I think it's time you get the value too. Now, don't end up on this year's list of top 10 data breaches. Visit canary.tools/twit. And for just $7,500 a year, you get 5 Canaries, your own hosted console, upgrade, support, and maintenance for a full year. And we have a special offer for our audience. Use code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box to get 10% off the price for life. We're sure you love Thanks Canary, but if you're not happy with that, you can always return your Canaries with their 60-day money-back guarantee for a full refund. That's canary.tools/twit and enter the code TWIT in the How Do You Hear About Us box. And we thank Thanks Canary for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's my favorite part of the show. We get to bring in a guest to drop some knowledge on the Twilight. Right until we have Jessica Burton, Global Product Marketing Manager at Seagate. Jessica, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Twilight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, our audience, they love hearing origin stories. Can you maybe just take us through a journey through tech and what kind of finally brought you to Seagate?
Sure. Yeah. So I originally, right out of school, I joined Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I worked there in the storage department or organization, rather, working on everything from tape. Believe it or not, people still store their data on tape for archival purposes, a very big business. And then also all the way to software-defined storage and cloud systems. After, I think it was almost 10 years, believe it or not, I moved on to Seagate and have been here for, 3 years. Working on product marketing management of our surveillance portfolio. It's really exciting. A lot of cool things going on in surveillance that people won't even know about beyond security. So we can talk about that more.
Absolutely. And absolutely. But we do know that obviously surveillance is on the rise. IaaS is on the rise. Obviously, data centers are scaling globally. They require speed, reliability, and they want to make sure their costs stay low. And they're becoming a huge factor. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about, I know we heard some announcements earlier in the year about some of the new technology coming from Seagate. Can you maybe go through some of that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We got a lot of cool things coming. Our CEO, Dave Mosley, just recently announced by 2020 of next year, we'll be launching the 20 terabyte drive, believe it or not, and then 50 terabytes by 2026. Sorry. But a lot of exciting innovation there, not just from a capacity standpoint, but we also have a new technology that we just recently rolled out called MACH.2. And what that basically does is enables customers to really take advantage of their IOPS. Recently we had Microsoft who tested out the MACH.2. Basically, as you can see here, if you scroll down just a little bit more, it has two heads or two actuators. We call it a dual actuator, and it's able to quickly read, seek, and record data on the drive much quicker than your typical drive that you have today. It's actually 2 times the performance with IOPS. And this is huge for like cloud providers that obviously have SLAs that they're required to meet. And so as the capacity increases, we have to be able to scale the performance of those heads to read and write quickly.
So what sector of the market is this for? Is this more for consumers? Is it for servers? Is it for data centers? Can it be for any of those? What are we talking about?
What we're really talking about is the higher capacity drives that we're putting on the market. So as I just mentioned, we're going to have a 50 terabyte by 2026. Those kind of drives in the past, as we have scaled the capacity, we've tried to make the reading and writing quicker by adding higher RPMs. But obviously with RPMs being increased, that causes vibration. And that's not a very good option for the long-term longevity of a drive. So what we've tried to do is add this MACH.2 technology that's really a game changer in making sure you're getting those IOPS that the customer wants without having the disadvantage of vibration, potentially lowering the performance over time of your drives. So this is really for larger scale type of environments, especially as you look at anything, probably more like petabyte type of environments, data centers, private cloud, hybrid clouds.
Got it.
And even obviously public clouds as well. Sorry.
Right. That's okay. No, I think that one thing that in fact, even the chat room's kind of driving to and kind of focusing on is the fact that the bigger the drives, the more risk, the fact that you can lose your data. What's kind of, has there been any kind of reliability changes in the design when it comes to MACH.2?
Well, and as I spoke about before, is we've really moved away from increasing the RPMs because that creates more vibration. And so with the MACH.2, we see a lot more reliability. And then by using the dual actuators that act independently in reading and writing the data, so you're not faced with that trade-off necessarily. And so actually with Microsoft, they did some testing of this drive for their public cloud, their Azure and the Exchange servers. And they actually found that they had a 60% faster performance from an IOPS per terabyte standpoint than what they were finding with their 15K drives.
Fantastic. Now, I do want to shift a bit because you mentioned it in the beginning of different applications in the market around these storage devices, and you talked a little bit about surveillance. Now, companies like Access and other companies are actually using these storage devices for surveillance. How are they using them, and how is some of the new technology will help them?
Yeah, so really our portfolio from Seagate covers everything from edge to cloud. So when we're talking about cameras, that's more towards the edge where all the data is being captured and recorded and ingested. And so you need to be able to have something on site or on-prem. Typically for video surveillance, that's going to be your MVRs and DVRs. And our Skyhawk and Skyhawk AI portfolio really encapsulate trying to store that data securely and safely. Then if you're looking at eventually transferring that data to the back end or the cloud, we have our Exos and Nitro product lines, both hard drives and SSDs, so that you can go beyond just archiving the data necessarily. A lot of our customers are finding a lot of value in retaining that data for a longer period of time so that they can push it through their AI deep learning machines to really capture more intelligence that they can use later on to be more predictive in the future.
So I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because that's one of the things I did want to kind of segue into, is the fact that AI itself has these complex models that require pretty heavy intensive processing to do it, and lots of data to train those models and to continually process them. Now, these types of obviously drives, storage-wise, size-wise, is definitely going to help. How is this going to impact some of the AI models that are out there? I think we had mentioned a little bit about surveillance. Like, is there applications there that you're seeing already that are changing because of the size of the drives and the performance?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of customers, especially as AI becomes more commoditized, especially with NVR-enabled AI. There's a lot of customers that are retaining their data longer. And as a result, a lot of data centers only have a certain footprint. It gets very expensive to keep adding racks and racks of drives. So to be able to have higher capacity drives to archive, not only archive, but also send that data through the AI learning machine is huge and very beneficial to these customers.
Fantastic. Now, now that you've seen that they've applied these things, what type of things are they applying it to? Like, where's the data coming from? Are you seeing things like, is this applied in automobiles? Is it applied? What part of the industry are you seeing more application for larger data sets and larger drives?
We are seeing it across the board, all types of verticals. So just to give you an example, we have smart cities that are really taking hold of this technology in that they're using it for intelligent traffic management. And what that means is that they can monitor the traffic lights, and reduce congestion accordingly. They can also identify accidents or roadblocks and deter folks accordingly so that they don't have huge traffic jams. Also identifying, fires, risky behaviors, things that they can alert security to is pretty huge. And even beyond smart cities, so let's jump into, talking about healthcare. You have remote healthcare that's becoming more and more prevalent, where you can have somebody being monitored remotely so they can have in-home care, be in the comforts of their own home. And the AI cameras can identify potential symptoms and notify their doctor if they need to help them in any sort of way. And then from an even larger standpoint, transportation, which is becoming more and more prevalent, you have autonomous vehicles, right? And so those autonomous vehicles are almost going to have a data center in of themselves in the backseat of the car in order to be able to interact with other vehicles on the road and infrastructure in the city, and also the pedestrians. And that can be super critical. I mean, in the fact that it has to be very quick. There can't be any latency because if the car misses the fact that there's somebody walking across the road, that becomes fatal.
Right. Well, when we come back, we're going to dig more into this software and hardware technologies that are firing some of these new AI applications. But before we do, we have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Now, I've used Wasabi, and they are just awesome. Now, you might be thinking, well, I use cloud storage, and the more I store in it, the more I access it, or the more operations I perform on it, the more I get charged, right? Well, in this day and age, that is the story for most cloud companies. But in fact, most storage companies today are trying to compete by seeing how low they can go in their storage fees and their ingress and egress fees. Wasabi has a solution for you here. Now, from experience, I can tell you, you try to go cheaper on some storage systems, but you'll always kind of give up on performance and reliability as well. Well, Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage has a way to fix all of these things. Now, from small personal projects all the way up to large enterprise projects, Wasabi has figured it all out. Well, let's start with the cost. Listen to this cost. Pricing is $5.99 a terabyte a month. Now, that is super competitive. Plus, listen to the game changer. Unlimited free egress for your data, no charge for API calls, so you don't have to pay to actually access your data. Now, check out what you're already paying for cloud storage today. I can tell you that not having to include egress fees and API calls for those CRUD operations will substantially save you money and lower your cost of doing business. Now, you're probably thinking, well, if they're cheaper, they must be slower, or they don't have the bells and whistles that I need. Well, with Wasabi, they are able to tackle all of these areas. Wasabi has developed some disruptive technology. They found ways to actually pull raw performance out of their storage devices without actually compromising anything. They have a revolutionary process that actually lays data on disks sequentially as opposed in blocks. Now, what happens? Well, that means that Wasabi's storage is 80% cheaper and 6 times faster than some of the leading industry leaders out there. Now, is your organization worried about compliance? Well, Wasabi is HIPAA, FINRA, and CGIS compliant as well. Now, fast, cheap storage really isn't worth much if you can't secure it, right? Well, Wasabi has an answer. Wasabi offers a unique feature called immutable buckets that cannot be deleted or altered, protecting your valuable data from accidental or malicious destruction. Now, see if you can find another service out there today that's doing that. Now, plus they also offer 90-day rotating integrity checks. In fact, they have 11 nines of durability, 11 nines. Move your on-premise IT setup to the cloud solutions, because I'll tell you one thing, businesses today, they're trying to get to the cloud. In fact, Gartner Group says by 2025, 80% of enterprises will have shut down their traditional data centers versus 10% today. Now, Wasabi is going to help ease that transition and help you do this confidently and move your software and your services to the cloud. Now, data storage is all Wasabi does. They are the experts. It's their passion. They believe that the world is rapidly escalating cloud storage needs. That progress needs depends on the cloud storage being more like a utility with fast, affordable storage available in endless supply. I bet you want to try this out right now, right? Go build something fun or move something to cloud right now. Now, they truly understand the needs of enterprise. So they don't have things like egress fees. Calculate savings for yourself and start a free trial of unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click the free trial link, and enter the code ENTERPRISE. Join the movement and migrate your data to cloud with confidence. Go to wasabi.com and make sure to use the offer code ENTERPRISE. And we thank Wasabi for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we have been talking with Jessica Burton, Global Product Marketing Manager at Seagate, about some of the new technologies that have been coming out. Of course, a lot of the applications, of course, also AI. But I did want to bring my co-host back in. In fact, I want to start with you, Curtis, because from an enterprise perspective, there are some challenges when you get these disks large, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, they start with the fact that you're putting an awful lot of storage on a single device. So the classic single point of failure is a constant concern. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask had to do with the nature of these IOPS we were talking about. You know, we over the years have talked a lot about the difference between the write-driven different applications and the read-driven applications. With AI becoming more of a commodity, with AI becoming a bigger piece of the use case, are you seeing any changes in sort of the balance of read and write for these very large drives? And, you know, were they designed with a particular balance in mind?
Most certainly. So when we look at surveillance, it's been primarily writes. And so that's what our drives were designed. Our surveillance optimized drive, Skyhawk, was primarily for those write type of applications. But we recognize as recently as the last couple of years that people are moving towards AI. It's going to be more of a mixed workload. And so therefore that requires a different type of drive. It's going to have to be able to support those mixed workloads where you're capturing simultaneously both video and AI events, which are going to be meta tagging at the same time. And so as a result, it has to be able to support the heavier workloads that are associated with video, along with being able to do that mixed workload with meta tagging. And that's in particular for surveillance. But across the board, I would say that's become more and more prevalent, especially as you're talking about AI, as you mentioned.
Well, again, with the AI and with these mixed workloads, there's a real question that I have about the drives as part of an overall system. And the question is this: while I have no question about Seagate being able to design high-speed, highly reliable devices, that's their history, I'm wondering about the interface. At some point, the drive has to get data from the rest of the system and deliver it back to the rest of the system. And, are the current interfaces that we're seeing for the drives up to the challenge of AI?
I would say so. You have NVMe. Obviously, if you need super high performance, on point type of reducing the latency. There's other less expensive, obviously, with SAS and SATA. But obviously, you're going to have to also, as you mentioned, face the fact that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So some customers obviously want to weigh their risks in putting everything on one large drive. But if you're looking at public and private clouds, a lot of these guys only have a certain amount of space that they can work with and a growing amount of data. And these type of drives where you're looking at having 50 terabytes by 2026 make a lot of sense to them because they will spread the data across the drive. So if they lose one drive, they're not necessarily going to lose all of their data. So there's definitely some redundancy built into a lot of these systems to accommodate that.
Jessica, I'd like to take the next question. And as a researcher, I'm all about long-term storage of data, archiving. Do you see these giant drives being a paradigm change in how we have to deal with archiving?
Well, I think what you're seeing is that a lot more people are going to be saving a lot more. Our everyday lives, we are constantly creating data. And in fact, with autonomous vehicles, they're expecting that those are going to create about 4 terabytes per day. That's pretty significant. So today, you're probably looking at a 50 terabyte drive and thinking that's a lot of data that we're going to have to produce over time to get to that amount. But when you start looking at these applications forward-looking, we're going to hit that pretty quick. And so I think when you're talking about AI in particular, that obviously consumes a lot of data as well. And you're going to see in general just a lot of corporations and customers in general too, I think, as AI becomes more prevalent even in the consumer space, wanting to save that data to make quicker and more intelligent decisions on point when things are happening so that they can, mitigate potential risks or improve certain processes, whatever it might be, beyond just security. Surveillance is changing beyond security. It's not about catching the bad guy anymore. It's about making improvements to our everyday lives.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'd like you to go and look into your crystal ball and polish it up. Where do you see us going in storage? Do you think there's going to be, is MACH.2 going to be a giant paradigm shift, or do you think it's iterative? Where do you think we're going to be in a couple of years?
I think it is just one step in a much bigger picture that you have to look at. We're going to be consuming so much more data than we are today. For instance, if you look at where IDC estimates that our consumption is going to be, they expect us to be producing around 175 zettabytes, and that's even hard to comprehend how much that is by 2026. And so we're nowhere near that right now. And so you're going to see it just explode. And as technologies require more and more AI, I think you're just going to see more data being retained for those purposes.
Well, we've been talking about all kinds of use cases, but I have to ask a question based on physical use cases at this point. When you think about these drives, at least initially, let's say over the next 12 to 18 months, do you see these as being primarily data center drives, or is there a role for these in departmental servers or smaller company servers as these smaller organizations or organizational parts take on things like surveillance and AI? Where are we going to see these deployed? And I've got to ask, is this the size drive that you can ever imagine someone plopping on their desktop and filling up with the photos that they've been pulling off their smartphone?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to go across the board. It's not going to be your consumer that's going to be buying the 50 terabyte drive, but it is going to be based on, the requirements and consumption needs of these customers. So if they are using a lot of surveillance, which is one of the top 3 drivers of why we're going to be using more data in the future, according to IDC, that's going to dramatically change how much storage they're required to hold. And so that you'd be surprised at how many small organizations where you think that they're just a small company, how much data they actually do consume and store. And so, if they're a manufacturing company, they may be looking at improving processes where they have they may already have security cameras, but they're going to leverage those security cameras beyond what their typical use cases were in the past and try to find operational efficiencies in the production line that they may not have in the past. And that requires for them to retain that data for a longer period of time with AI. So I definitely think it's going to be across the board. It's not going to just be the large enterprises that you necessarily would have seen in the past because, as I mentioned, AI is going to be more and more prolific across the board.
Jessica, thanks so much for being here. We're running a little bit low on time. I did want to give you an opportunity to maybe tell the folks at home where they should learn more about Seagate, where they can find more about some of the applications in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. So we have the Seagate.com website. You can learn more about our drives and our solutions. So from there, we also have pages on surveillance and other applications that might be of interest to you. So you can definitely check it out. We're not just a consumer hard drive company like so many people think of us. We span from hard drives to SSDs, from consumer to enterprise, and even racks and systems these days. So check us out.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you've done it again. You sat through another hour of the best dang enterprise podcast in the universe, according to 9 out of 10 spin disc sequential bits. But I want to make sure I thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to my co-host in crime, starting with our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, happy holidays, my friend. Can you maybe tell the folks at home where they can find you, your work, and where they can get in touch with you?
I am on Twitter at ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab, or you're more than welcome to drop me an email. I am Cheebert at twit.tv, or better yet, why don't you use Twyet at twit.tv and hit all the hosts. We'd love to hear your ideas for shows. We'd love to have you introduce us to PR managers and product managers so we can go and invite them on the show. We'd love to hear your show ideas. Happy holidays to the Twyet Riot.
Thanks, Cheebert. We also thank our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Happy holidays, Curtis. Can you maybe tell the folks at home where they can find you, your work, and what you're doing over the holidays?
Well, the happiest of holidays to you, Lou, and to the rest of the Twyet Riot. I'm going to keep writing for Dark Reading through the end of the year. I've got lots of articles coming up ranging, well, from the sublime to the ridiculous. And I hope that people will check me out on Dark Reading, and especially at The Edge. See that little blue box up in the upper left corner? Check me out there. That's where most of my stuff is happening these days. I'm going to be writing all kinds of interesting things there. And as always, I'll let you know about them when they go up by posting on Twitter from KG4GWA.
Well, folks, we also have to thank you as well. You are the person that drops in each and every week to get your enterprise goodness, and we want to make it easy for you to watch and listen to our show. So go out right now to our show page, twit.tv/Twiat. There you'll find all of our amazing back episodes, show notes, co-host information, guest information, and the links to the stories we do during the show. But more importantly, right next to those videos, you'll get those really helpful subscribe and download links. In fact, you can get to choose whatever podcast app you want, and you can support the show by getting your audio version, your video version, or your HD video version of your choice and listen on any one of your devices. Now, it's the best way to stay on top of your enterprise and IT news, so go ahead and subscribe. Now, after you subscribe, you can impress your friends, family, and coworkers with sharing Twiat with them. So go ahead and share them. We love doing this show, and with more subscribers, we can definitely continue to support it. Now, if you've already subscribed and you're available during the days sometimes, you can watch our show live, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time on Fridays. Right now, we're doing the show. We do the show live at live.twit.tv. You can come to see how the show is run. You can see all the behind the scenes. Plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into the chat room live as well. That's irc.twit.tv. We have some really great characters in there. They give us some great questions. They even kind of gear the show and drive the show in different directions. So we really love that crew in there. So thank you so much for being there. And definitely jump in if you're going to watch the show live. Now, if you can't watch the show live, we still have a really great community out there. In fact, come join the 24/7 discussion at the new community location for Twit at twit.community. Now, all the hosts are out there. The Twit community is some great discussions, show content, host information, guest information, and really just some great discussions on technology. Now, come out and join the twit.community. Plus, also, don't forget, you can follow me, twitter.com/LouMM. I have all my holiday company gripes. You can follow me there and see all the information I give. Also, all the projects I'm going to do over the holiday weekend and over the holiday time frame. Plus, if you want to see what I do at Microsoft during my normal work week, go to dev.office.com. There we post all the latest and greatest ways to customize your office experience to help you become more productive. I also want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support us each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. Thank you so much for all their support. I also want to thank all the engineers at Twit. Guys, thank you so much for all your support. And I also want to thank Mr. Brian Chee. He's not only our co-host in crime, but again, like he said, he's our producer as well. He gets all the bookings, the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do the show without him. But before we sign out, we do have to thank our TD for today, our very own Victor. Victor, tradition of the show says I have to ask you, what was the main topic of today's show?
Well, what I learned, and it was kind of at the beginning of the show, with Chee being excited about Pokemon manhole covers, I think he's hinting that he's going to put these up on his Wi-Fi antennas when he's in the future. And I think that would be cool.
I would, I really love Pokemon, so I would say that's really close. But I would say actually it was more about backing up. But maybe next time, Victor. Thank you so much for playing.
Well, I still want to see them.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep quiet.